Happy Monday. And as always, the start of the new week gets me motivated by different thoughts. And last week, I had to deal with some difficult thoughts. So I thought I'd share them with you. Now, before we get into this, remember if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do. We make it and break it by numbers of subscribers as well as your comments and feedback. It's very important to us. And I don't want to miss it because today we're going to really talk about what's important and good for us and our professional careers and or our businesses and what's not. So my topic for this week is what is no longer serving you? All right, let's take a deep breath like Yoga Dog says. This is going to be deep. So I want you to reflect on what in your life, personally or professionally, or both, is no longer serving you for a positive benefit? Now, this is a tough question because we all know we have those things. We have those elements in our lives. But sometimes it's easier to forget about them or ignore them or put them a little bit to the side. But the thing is when we know they're no longer serving us, it's like this little voice in the back of our head continuing to chatter at us and tell us, you know, that that's not right. You know, you need to be doing something different. You know, you need to do something to have a different outcome. I always hate that statement that, if you do what you've always done, you'll always get what you always got. But it's really true. And when we have to reflect on what's no longer serving us, it requires us to really step back. So at the end of this, I'm going to share my own big revelation that I had last week. It was a tough one. So prepare for yourself. So let's talk about what this might be. What's no longer serving you? Well, sometimes that might be, something like your health or your fitness or your weight. That's something that I've been dealing with the last couple of years too, and finally feeling like my path is on the way to sticking to making constantly better choices for my health and fitness and weight. And so that's a great thing. What's another thing that might not be serving you? Maybe negative thoughts, those doubts that you have about your abilities or how things could change. Maybe it's about something that you're doing at work or not doing at work that, maybe it's, that you haven't asked for that promotion or that, you're in a job that's no longer serving you emotionally or professionally. Maybe it's about trying to do something that is not ever going to work out, which might be a little hint, not that it won't work out, but that that right now the energy you're putting to make it work is not worth the payoff. Maybe it's being overstressed and living a life that's overstressed. I've been there before, had to make some really conscious choices to realize that that was no longer serving me and had to find strategies to move beyond overstress. Maybe it's being disorganized. Maybe it's about the little stressors. I've told you many times that when my email gets, over 10, really stresses me out, and that I'm still struggling with that a little bit in the last few weeks, just because of some different events that we've had going on. So a lot of those things, there's a lot that I'm always working on, but I'm talking about something big. Something really monumental for you, something that is really getting in the way of you achieving new success. Now, how do you figure out what that is? Well, probably you already know. But this is what I would suggest is that right after watching this video, I would suggest that you find some quiet space. Again, my deep breath. Yoga Dog's a great reminder for me. Just take some quiet time. Just sit and be in your own head and reflect on what is no longer serving you right now. It's getting in the way of what you want to accomplish or the success that you want to have or your feeling of satisfaction in life, personally or professionally. And take this time to just be quiet and reflect. Think about those things that are coming up, but then really dive down and think of the one that really has been nagging you at the back of the head, that chatter that I talked about, that little bit of that voice that's saying, that this is no longer serving you. Why do you continue to pursue it? And in that moment, in that quiet reflection, get real. And that's where I'm talking, how I always talk about the mirror. You put the mirror up in front of yourself and you look at it. Get real. This is your own moment of quiet anyway. So nobody else is going to hear what's going on in your head, but get real with yourself and ask yourself, why do I continue with something that is no longer serving me? What is the reason? And this is not to beat yourself up, but this is actually to help you develop a pros and cons list. And even though you don't see it on my wall right now, because I always erase everything before I tape anything, it's exactly what I did with my major issue is I wrote it out, the name of it on the board. And on one side, I wrote all the positive things about that issue. And then I wrote all the ways that it was no longer serving me. And what was really interesting is on the side of all the positives, they were all things that I wanted for that part. That was part of the dream. That was part of the positive, what I wanted to accomplish. But on the other side were the realities of it. And the realities I couldn't deny when I saw it in that form. So whether it's on paper or like with me with a dry erase wall, it's about looking at it and looking at that pros and cons list and reaching that point where you can say it out loud. This, put in whatever you want, whatever is important to you, is no longer serving me. First, you say it out loud. Saying out loud to yourself with no one else around is really important because so many times we know we're saying it somewhere in our head, but we kind of hope that if nobody else hears it, then it's okay. It's just going to fix itself, right? Well, no. So when we say it out loud, we take away some of that emotional context with it. That's exactly what happened to me. Again, I'll give you my example in a moment. But then once you've said it out loud to yourself and you say, I am going to make a change, then you have to say it to somebody else. And you have to be able to acknowledge this is no longer serving me. I am going to stop it, change it, fix it, whatever the end result is. But you have to say it first to yourself because otherwise, when you say it to somebody else, it may not have the emotion behind it, or it might be fear. You have to reach that point where you can say it without that emotional attachment. Then you have to plan it though. You have to plan for how you are going to remove, change, fix this issue in your life that's no longer serving you. Now, do you take baby steps or do you rip the Band-Aid off? Well, I think that depends on you. I really do. Some people have to wade into the water a little bit before they dive all the way in. That's me. Other people jump right in. And so you have to do what serves you and helps you to make that transition. Because if you're not a person who rips off Band-Aids, and I want you to rip off Band-Aids, then that can be really traumatic. But baby steps, you have to make sure you're still increasing the depth of the water as you go. You can't just let it, be too long, or else you'll never do it, and it will still continue not to serve you. So whenever you are at that point, then the reality means that you are no longer being burdened by what is no longer serving you. Now you are proactively working on what will make you better, your life better, your business better, your relationships better, your health better. And so now you're on a path to success. Whereas even moments before, you may still have been wallowing in that sense of this is no longer serving me. So I've gone through this process. I said it out loud to myself. I said it out loud to my husband. And now I've said it out loud to my team. So now we are taking the steps to make this happen. So in working with my coach, my business coach, we came across this issue where we went through this entire process. And I said, here's what is no longer serving me. We created an app for Shock Your Potential, which I love, which I had wanted to create for a long time. But it has not worked out the way I'd wanted to. And it's not that it couldn't, but it didn't. And a lot of that had to do with the pandemic, because where I dreamed the app would be placed in what I was doing there had everything to do with when I was speaking and training around the globe, like I was prior to the pandemic. And even though we tried many different things to keep it going the way it was, it just wasn't working, and it's no longer serving us. It's no longer serving me, and it's no longer serving my business. That doesn't mean that I can't have that again at a later point and knowing what I know now. But the realization that it was taking energy, time, and money, and it was not serving the business, and it was definitely not serving me when it wasn't fulfilling the initial dream that I had for it, means that we have to let it go. And I'll tell you, I've actually been struggling with this decision for 7 months. 7 months I've known. The last 3 months I've really known. But it wasn't until last week that I said it out loud to myself and then said it to my husband and then said it to my team. And I put the timelines in for how we're going to back out of this one component of our business. And in that moment, then it was no longer a burden to me. It was no longer anything that was weighing us down or not serving us. It actually became freedom, a freedom to know that it's time to let it go. Now, I'm not going to tell you I didn't mourn it because I still am. I'm mourning the dream of what I wanted it to be. But what I'm really excited about now is the opportunity to replace the time, energy, and money and focus that we were putting into that element that was no longer serving us and putting it into another aspect of our business that will serve us, that will not only feed the business, but feed my soul. With that kind of decision, there is not only freedom, but there's renewed energy and excitement. There's new life. It's like a new spring. It's like washing off, or carrying out all the snow, after the end of the season, or, spring cleaning in your home where you're letting more sunshine in to bring new life. So, my challenge to you this week, my question about your motivation is, what is no longer serving you? Work through the process. It's not going to be easy, I won't lie, but it will make you better. And again, remember, please, if you have not yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do. That will help to serve us, believe me. If it doesn't serve you, then don't hit subscribe, but I bet you it will because we bring information like this to you all the time to help motivate you, challenge you, and always remind you to shock your own potential. Have a great week, everybody.